Thanks. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to see friends and people I haven't seen in a while, and then connect to new friends. So hopefully through this session we'll be able to talk a little bit about this. And it's a little bit intimidating to see proven leaders, people of substance, people who have accomplished a lot in their career, and talk to them about authentic leadership. But I'd like you to just maybe open yourself a little bit and see if what I'm saying makes sense to you, and then teach me something if we can have a little bit of time to talk. When this came up, I immediately went back to something that I think about every day, and skills that I'm trying to impart more to the trainees every day as we socialize them. They only get socialized once, and when we have them as faculty, it's impossible really to re-socialize people. But I asked them, and even as recently as yesterday, I asked them, well, what if you could improve your performance, get support where you didn't formerly get support, decrease your frustration as you're going through your shifts, as you're going through your administrative projects, improve your professional satisfaction, get results, and get on a real path and be identified as a leader? Wouldn't that sound really good? They all say yes, and I said, okay, if you want to get on this path, the first thing that you're going to have to do is understand yourself. And so this is where this title, I don't like the title of Authentic Leadership. It's kind of suggested for me, but it's an okay title. But let's go on a journey to understand ourselves. And even with this understanding, you're going to have to make some adjustments in your world, no matter how proven and how experienced you are. I want to go and first have a conversation about us. Now, as human beings, why did we survive throughout the millennia, throughout the arc of human evolution? What was it about human beings that survived? We're vulnerable to animals. The lions and tigers and bears like to eat us. We're kind of tasty. We're not the fastest. We're not the most armored. The heat, the cold can kill us. A snake bite can kill us. An insect can kill us. Bacteria under our skin could cause an infection that can kill us. Throughout the millennia of human evolution, there's no logical, sensible reason for human beings to have survived. Why did we survive? So I'm going to assert to you it's for one reason and one reason only. Human beings have a finely tuned neurologic system that's principally designed to do one thing, and that's to detect threat. And so we have if I walk up to you, and I push you, you push me back, right? You detected threat, and then you start to label me with it's a bad guy, he's an evil guy, he's a difficult guy, can't get along with him, stay out of that lecture, right? So we have a finely tuned neurologic system that's going to detect threat all day, every day. I'm working in the emergency department, I'm having a perfectly fine day, the resident beside calls a report upstairs, and he said, this is Josh, I have a 90-year-old COPD, needs to be admitted, right? And he paused for a few seconds, and he said, well, you don't have to be such a jerk, and he starts fighting with his hospitalist on the phone. He starts fighting, and then he's like, geez, you're always a jerk, da-da-da-da-da, this person has to be admitted, da-da-da-da. No, it is not a soft admission. Okay, so there are all kinds of, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, it was perfectly fine a second ago, and I'm like, time out. And here he's fighting, he's getting red in the face, and I just had to reach over, and I just like put him on hold. I said, what happened? He said, well, I was just called. I said, a 90-year-old needed to be admitted with COPD. And the hospitalist went like this. I'm like, okay, so you got in a big fight because he sighed, right? The neurologic system of my resident is principally designed to detect threat. What did he hear in that sigh? He heard disrespect, he heard unnecessary admission, he heard a lot of value and attribution, principally designed to detect threat. You're driving down the street, somebody cuts you off, you're cursing a blue streak. I know you're polite people, but stuff comes out of your mouth, right? It just does. It just does. So we have a finely tuned neurologic system that's going to, all day, every day, be detecting threat. We're instinctive, we're impulsive, we're temperamental. Aristotle said the first and best success is control of self. This response, this threat response, is principally mediated in the amygdala, but it fills our whole body. The amygdala fires, and then we have a sympathetic surge, and our cerebral cortex activates to try to explain and understand the threat. And our life and our beliefs are driven off of this neurologic wiring. That helped us survive throughout human history, but may or may not be getting you the results that you want today. The first and best success is control of self, not subordinating this, but simply recognizing and being aware that it's going on, and then we can design and choose how we want to proceed. Now, here's the other interesting part. So you got an amygdala that fires, and it's firing all day, every day. You go to an administrative meeting, it fires. And I can see this in the language of the doctors in the emergency department, and worse, we have 7 hospitals. I see it in the voices and the language of the doctors, because there'll be doctors at one of our community sites complaining that they're underpaid. And their pay has progressed reasonably, but slowly, and the regional market jumped, right? It just did. And so they see this as a threat, and then they see we've lost some candidates to competing health systems because a competing health system could pay more money, right? Somebody we really wanted to hire went with a competitor. Well, what's going on there? The threat response goes, clearly administration doesn't care about us, clearly administration is underpaying us, we're undervalued, underappreciated, underrecognized, and the medical director sends an email saying, I talked to administration that we have to get a pay raise. I talked to administration, right? Referring to administration in the third party. I'm like, hey, medical director, you are administration. You're not allowed to have the luxury of talking about them in the third person, right? Okay, so the threats, natural, human, not blaming, it just is what it is. All day, every day, the threat response is gone. But here's the problem. That once the threat response activates, then the cerebral cortex activates, and we try to explain the threat. Driver cuts you off, it's a lousy driver, it's stupid, they're dangerous, right? You're starting to give all kinds of judgment and meaning to the threat. The functional MRI shows this. They put people into the functional MRIs, and they'll ask provocative questions, they'll see where the threat center lights up. But then they'll ask very neutral questions, but very interesting questions, like, is it okay to have sex with a chicken? Well, everybody says no, like instantly, like everybody says no, because it's a low threat response, but it's like no. And then they ask why. Okay, so the no is from a very primitive part of the brain, right above the brainstem. It's like no. Okay, great. Then they say why. Then the cerebral cortex activates afterwards and searches the cerebral cortex, and people ask stupid questions like, well, do you own the chicken or do you not own the chicken? Is the chicken alive or is it dead? Right? Like this is serious. No, these are like reasonable adult human beings that are asking. So the instinct comes first, and the reasoning comes second. All right? And so you think that you're reasonable human beings. Yeah, you kind of are. But you're instinctive, impulsive, temperamental, we all are. It's just our human nature. It's part of the human condition, how we're designed, how we're wired. But the judgment will come afterwards. So I need you to accept and go on this journey of this leadership journey. We just simply understand and fully accept who we are, that we're a bundle of neuroanatomic reflexes and impulses. The amygdala controls this reflexive fight or flight. The medial prefrontal cortex, this is where the executive functions reside. They help us understand the feeling that we've just had. They help us control the impulses. They help slow us down. And they help give some meaning. And so this medial prefrontal cortex helps us not act on those impulses all the time. And in fact, those with anger management issues, those with poor impulse control, anatomically have a smaller medial prefrontal cortex. The medial prefrontal cortex develops mostly through the ages of birth to 5 years old, where kids are taught right from wrong and taught impulse control. And failure to do that, they're going to have problems. It's very hard to then develop this later. And so the medial prefrontal cortex enables a modification of the impulses coming from the amygdala. And I can say with assurance, you have well-developed medial prefrontal cortexes, so you have really good aptitudes for leadership. It's why you're here today. We're born with a neurologic wiring, but it's modified based on the environment, on parenting, and the way we think. But no matter what, we're going to feel the impulses, and we're going to justify those impulses. We believe that the good things are inside of us. The world is the dangerous place. The threats are outside of us. We believe that we're good and the threats are bad, and we're going to be explaining why the world is a bad and dangerous place all day, every day. Does this sound familiar to you? This is the world in which we live. It's just a concoction of your brain, and it really needs to start doing some reality testing, because what if you just believed differently? We can't succeed through this domination. You tried that already. You didn't get where you are today by reflexively dominating your way through your existence. You would have gotten swept aside. You don't have that much power. So the domination opposition is not going to get us the relationships. It's not going to get us the affinity. It's not going to get us the happiness that we seek and desire. It's not going to get you to the point of authentic leadership. It'd be nice if the world just did everything we wanted it to do, if everybody just listened to us. But it's just not going to be reality. So if we can't change others, if we can't dominate and push and bully our way through the world, how are we going to do? How are we going to affect change? That's going to be through leadership. The amygdala would have us dominate. The amygdala would have us bully. And it feels good temporarily. There's a threat and you like dominate the threat. It's like really good. Have you ever tried that at work? Once. And then that just doesn't go anywhere. I was a chief resident. Learned that a long time ago. I was the chief resident. Person 1 year behind me. He's working. It's a very busy, intense shift. The nurses had 4 rooms assigned. The nurses didn't get along with each other, so they were strictly assigned rooms, 4 rooms per nurse. The charge nurse was put with her friend 4 patients who were being held for admission, nothing going on there. She was sitting in the middle reading People magazine. The other nurse, junior nurse that they didn't like because she was kind of always gung-ho, she got a 67-year-old with chest pain, 80-year-old with acute left hemiparesis, and another patient with AFib, pressure 90, going at like 160, all at the same time, right? And so the resident and the nurse is in there trying to take care of 3 patients. The resident sees the other nurse sitting out in the middle reading People magazine. So he walks out and said, can you help out here? No, she'll get to it. He goes back in. So now how's he feeling with no, she's getting to it? His amygdala is firing. He's feeling threat. He's feeling anger, right? He goes out, we really need your help in here. No, it's okay. It's her rooms. She'll get to it. So he's seething now, right? He's just furious. He goes out another time. Amygdala gets the best of him. What does he do? He has no other path. He doesn't know what to do, but he knows the nurse needs help. What did he do? He's like, get off your fat ass and help out in here. Oh, right? Well, that got a reaction. Okay, so all kinds of phone calls and email, all kinds of stuff go on. Next day, I'm like the chief resident. I hear about this. It's like this major deal. He gets called in millions of offices, and he sits down. He's like, hold on a second. How is it that I'm the one that got in trouble when I'm the one trying to take care of the patients? Right? So the amygdala and this points of domination are going to take you to roots of disaster. So we can't change others through the amygdala and through domination. We only can change ourselves, though. But if we get insight and self-control, the world around us will change, and that's the path to leadership. So he who the gods wish to destroy, they first make angry. Anger is mediated in the amygdala, and unconstrained, it's going to take you down to paths of disaster. So if you put a mouse in a maze, what's a mouse do? Mouse doesn't have a big cerebral cortex. Mouse isn't going to make a lot of judgments and decisions about what in the world is good or bad. Mouse just wants to survive. You put a mouse in a maze, twist and turn, gets to the end of the maze, doesn't find cheese. What's the mouse do? Turn around, runs back to the beginning, tries a different path. Doesn't find cheese. What's the mouse do? Run back to the beginning, tries a different path. Finds cheese, mouse is happy, mouse survives, right? Small cerebral cortex, amygdala, survives. Put a doctor in a maze. Who the hell built this GD maze so crooked? I trained for 12 years. It's a crooked maze. I can't believe I have to walk this maze. Somebody should be bringing the cheese to me. I deserve to have cheese brought to me, not to be walking maze in the first place. Okay, get to the end of the maze. No cheese. Holy H, I can't believe there's no cheese. CEO, you're making $2 million a year. Nurses, you're incompetent. There's supposed to be cheese here. You're not supposed to be stocking cheese. Back to the beginning of the maze, what do? Try a different path? No, this is the worst maze in the world. They tell everybody. This is a terrible maze. I got to find a different maze. I got to get out of this maze. This is our life. This is our life. And so it's funny here, when you go home and hear it, just think of the mouse in the maze. And so we've got to find a different path. We've got to find a different way. So our repetitive behaviors, our habits, our styles are going to bring us back to the same experiences that we've already had if we don't consciously work on finding a different path through the maze. Oops. Click, oops. I'm messing this up. And so if you commit to at least opening yourself and understanding the self-awareness is the first and best success. The self-awareness where you understand that your amygdala is firing and then develop some skills to calm yourself. But first we have to understand ourselves. Notice through this that we're all in the same boat. We all have the amygdalas, we all have the responses, we all have the ability to use the medial prefrontal cortex to understand what's going on, and our cerebral cortex is going to help explain this world to us where the good things are outside of us. We are all in that same boat. That self-awareness, though, is going to help you stop and then choose the path through the maze. Now, which kid is destined to be the emergency doctor? Right? Right? Okay, so you're born with certain temperaments and wiring, and I'm not going to try to change your temperament or your wiring. If you are who you are, we'll go with it. But you have to understand and have the self-awareness to know, is this behavior that I'm choosing going to get me the success that I want? Our impulses, our temperament, our instincts are going to influence our behaviors and actions. It's fine the way it is. However, if you're not finding cheese at the end of the maze, let's try a different route. So let's go on that journey. I want to just take 10 seconds and have absolute silence. Ready? Absolute silence. There's going to be some ambient noise, but absolute silence. Ready? Go. All right. Was there silence? Was there silence? Like, well, Vicky's like, I think there was silence. There wasn't silence at all. There was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to squeak the chair. Vicky's like, does he color his hair? Like, there's all kinds of stuff that's going through your head. There's, oh, it just sounds like I should have peed when I had the chance, right? There's all kinds of stuff that's going through your head during that even moment of silence. This constant whirl in your head is creating a reality. It's creating your belief on how the world exists. Did you ever drive home and get in fights with people who weren't even in the car? Right? Next time I'm going to tell her, right? So there's a constant voice that's going on in your head. Now, what's the difference between the voice in your head and the voice in the head that's schizophrenic? They know they're crazy. Like, you don't even know that there's a voice in your head. They know there's a voice and they're medicated for it. Like, come on. You believe that your voice is real, and you believe that your view of reality is the right way. So instead, we have to be conscious of this voice. We have the blessed ability to change the voice in our head, unlike others. We have the blessed ability to change this voice if we can just quiet. And in that quiet, deep breathing. I don't know if you breathe in, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out, hold for 4 seconds, breathe in, hold for 4 seconds, right? So just slow breathing. And if you can't get this impulsive reaction out of your head, you don't want to be the guy that's reacting with the anger. You don't want to be the woman who's lashing out. You want to be the person who's sitting there just focused on breathing for a few minutes, because then you can start to frame the situation. If you can quiet the voice in your head, sometimes you can start to hear what's going on in the head of the other person. And once you start to do that, the world opens up. I was working in the emergency department, 2 a.m. years ago, and I remember distinctly I'm standing at the counter, and a patient is being walked into room 8, and the patient's like, I want my Dilaudid, I'm in pain, I need my pain medicine now. Now, I see out of the corner of my eye, the patient is walking without any hesitation or disability, yelling for pain medicines as the person gets put in the room. Now, 2 a.m., person's demanding pain medicine in a combative and hostile tone that doesn't look sick at all. How do you feel? Like, I hated that person. Like, you just hated the person. My amygdala is firing. You go in a room with distaste for a person, how's that encounter going to go? Not well at all. So I can't help my instinctive impulsive reaction, but I can take some deep breaths. It's 2 a.m. I can't get over this. But I can look across the other side and I can distract myself. I can try to reframe. I can say, well, maybe the person's really sick. Nah, right? I can try to reframe. But you know what? I can't go in the room and not be the kind of doctor I want to be, and at least in a caregiving stance. For the patient's demanding medicines, I've reframed the stuff. Look, yeah, they're demanding narcotics, but no matter how or why they're suffering, they're suffering. I'm here to take care of people who are suffering. Maybe they're suffering because of their addiction, but who the heck wants to be in this situation where they're demanding narcotics, right? So I can reframe the situation. It's not so bad to me. I'm no longer dislike the person. I feel some sympathy to the person. I now have to get to a level where I walk in the room and I'm looking across and I see this older poor woman in the hallway of the emergency department and a nurse just treating her with such kindness that I started to feel kind. And I watched that interaction, and then I started to feel kind. And with that evolution, I could walk into that patient's room, understanding that she was suffering, and navigate a path through her emergency department journey. And so if I had walked in earlier, it would not have gone well. And so we need then to figure out a different path through the maze, a different frame for our world. I started this conversation years ago when other people's emergency shifts worked a lot better than my emergency shifts. I was in the military in San Antonio, and housekeepers, secretaries were all civil servants, employees. Techs were good, young airmen, and then nurses and docs were officers. So I was a new doc, and the shifts, it's hard to get the things going well. But I saw this one attending who just always had things together, and the things were moving. And I saw, and it struck me one time, when I saw a young major, a resident, walking down the hallway and focused on the tasks, no ill will, focused on getting the job done. And he brushed past a housekeeper. And this other attending happened to be standing there, the attending that made everything work well. And he put his hand on the major's shoulder. He said, "Hey, Steve," slowed him down. He's on his way to do an important task. "Hey, Steve, do you know Saeed? Saeed's a housekeeper here. What do you say? You've been here, what, 20 years? Saeed, this is Steve, one of the best residents we have. Hey, Steve, you need to know Saeed. He cleans these rooms so fast, so thoroughly, so well. He has prevented the spread of so much infectious disease. He's saved more lives than you and I ever will. Steve, Saeed, Saeed, Steve." That attending owns Saeed. Like, Saeed is cleaning those rooms. He's on the team. He's on the team. And he has never been more proud of his job, more engaged, at least when that attending's on. At least when that attending's on. And so that attending gave Saeed a gift, but Saeed gives the gift back. They are a team. And so when I got to Northwestern in the early 2000s, we're trying to get the EKG times. This is when we were just getting the STEMIs to the cath labs. So you know how we had to get the EKGs done real fast, right? It's a big pain, right? Now we do it regularly, but back in the day it was very, very hard. And a standout moment, because I'm a new chief, and I had arrived at Northwestern, a lot of conflict, a lot of controversy. I have my agenda about the stuff that I want to improve. And on an overnight shift, the technicians had been taught to do EKGs and hand them to the docs. But the docs in the 3 a.m. were in the resuscitation room. They were all in a very long, complicated resuscitation. Man put it in room 7, but he didn't really have that much chest pain. It was mostly weakness and dizziness. So they did an EKG and set it on the counter. And 40 minutes later, resuscitation, was stabilized, trying to get the room under control. The attending came out and she found the EKG on the desk, and the EKG was VTAC. She said, "This can't be." She turned around, patient sitting in the room watching the whole scene, 63-year-old guy, pressure 98, and he's in VTAC. So what did she do? Who the hell did this EKG? She blows up. She starts screaming, right? So then everybody rushes to the four winds. Is that normal? It's normal. It's natural. It's instinctive. Can you blame her? Can't blame her. But is that the path through the maze that you want? So then what did she do? The next day, she goes to tell all the other attendings. What did she tell the attendings? Oh, the technicians are so bad. The nurses are so terrible. We'll never get this stuff done. Da, 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 da. The next day in the morning, we have a faculty meeting. I'm the new chief. I have my little agenda, right? I'm ready to. I come into the meeting, and everybody comes in bitter, sour, angry. Did you hear what happened the other night? Right? No, I didn't hear what happened the other night. Right? Well, they told me the story. And so now my amygdala is firing, their amygdala is firing, our amygdalas are firing, and I'm the new faculty. And so I say, okay, well, looks like my agenda just went out the window, but should I table my agenda to talk about their stuff, and then they're in control? Like, how are we gonna navigate this one? I said, well, geez, it sounds like this is the most important thing we have going. Is that right? Yes. It's the most important thing. So should we table all the other improvements and fix this? What do you mean? It sounds like you just said this is the most important thing we have going. You want this fixed. In fact, we need to get it fixed, and we need to get it fixed now. Is that right? Yes. What should we do? I ask. Fire all the technicians. I said, okay, make you a deal. We'll table all the other initiatives. We're going to focus on this and this alone for the next 30 days. And I'll take care of the nurses and technicians. For the next 30 days, we're going to only focus on this issue. But there's one thing that I need from you. In fact, you've just said that this is the most important thing, that if you can't do this, you have to question whether you can really work here. All I ask of you is when the technicians hand you the EKG, I'm going to have it handed to the attending and not the resident to signal the importance, and that way we can monitor them. And then when they hand it to the attending, don't say, "Don't interrupt me," don't say, "I'm too busy," don't say, "Put it on the chart." You have to take the EKG, and then you have to look them in the eye, and then you have to say, "Thank you." There's 3 parts. Take the EKG, look them in the eye, and say, "Thank you." Now, silence. Silence. So you just said to me the most important thing. So now I'm moving back into the dominant position. I'm going to watch this and monitor this every day. I'll talk to the nurses and the technicians. 30 days, we'll have it fixed if you do your part. Now, there was a quarter of the attendings who actually could do that. They could take the EKG and say thank you. There was 50% that was like, okay, it's going to take some work here. We're going to, and 25% like their neck was going to break and their head would fall off. Like they could not. But even within the next days, the technicians started to feel a difference. They started to feel a difference. And every day I was reminding the attendings, take the EKG, look them in the eye, and say thank you. I know it's inconvenient. I know it's an interruption, but we're going to fix this. And so all of a sudden, the technicians started to feel a difference. One particularly loudmouth attending, an EKG was shoved in front of his face. Big ST elevation MI. The attending said, "Where's this patient at?" They said, "Just placed in the room behind you, sir." He said, "You just saved this person's life." Loudly, publicly, "You just saved this person's life." Oh, you couldn't get them to stop handing us the EKGs. They're riding the EKG machine like a pony. Like, "We're going to get a heart attack today. We're going to get a heart attack today." They were on the team. They were on the team. I had never even talked to the nurses and the attendings. It was only the attendings' behavior that were changed. And in the flip from the technicians were bad and a threat to the positive inspiration of the behavior that we wanted and the uniform support for it, the world around us changed. The world around us changed. And so we have the abilities then truly to change the world. It works up and down, by the way, too. We have the former chief. He's still working part-time in his early 70s, 73, 74. And back in the day, he was old school, rigid guy. This is 15 years ago. Walking through the emergency department, it was just 15 minutes to shift change. A patient with kidney stone put in the room. He's trying to organize his stuff for sign-out. The nurse came out and said, "Can I put an IV and give Dilaudid?" He said, "No, no, no, the next team will get to it." He was old school. If he started the patient, he was going to finish. She said, "Well, but it looks like a kidney stone. The person's in pain. Can I just start an IV and give Dilaudid?" "No, no, the next team will be coming shortly." She walked out a third time. She said, "Doc, can I give the patient some pain medicine?" Just then, the secretary looked up from her online shopping and eating Cheetos. I don't know if you're those kind of secretaries. She looks up, and she said, "But Doc, you can't leave the patient in pain. You're my hero." He shuffles into the room, right? So you're not going to criticize your way to greatness. You're not going to condemn your way to happiness. You're not going to whine your way to greatness. You're going to lead through a positive voice and positive change. And so that's where the authenticity comes in. The authenticity is not that you're not going to, let's not deny the negative feelings you're going to have. It's going to show up in the amygdala. It's going to show up as an instinctive, impulsive. It's why you've been designed to succeed, because you're seeing threats everywhere. You can moderate and temper those impulses. But then, instead of the cerebral cortex telling you that the world is bad, you can go to a higher level. And that higher level then brings us to the point of integrity. When we start to say that this chair has integrity, what do you mean? You mean that it's physically whole. If it's missing a leg, does it have integrity? No, it doesn't have integrity. But when we say a human has integrity, what do we mean? We mean that they keep their word. We mean that they have a certain stability and a certain moral center. And that's the wholeness that's required of a human being. That's the wholeness that's required, no less than a chair. But it doesn't come mediated through the primitive part of the amygdala that is our instinctive wiring. In the economic downturn, you may have heard the term moral hazard. When the companies made huge bets and then the government had to bail it out, they talked about moral hazard. The hazard wasn't on the government who bore the debt. That was a financial hazard. The moral hazard was on the companies that wouldn't learn. So the children, your faculty, others, have to bear the consequences of their actions, without which they don't develop a morality. And moral hazard is the failure to develop morality, the failure to develop integrity, the failure to develop as a person who's capable of leadership. That's the moral hazard. And so moral hazard is, we always think it's the wrong way, but the hazard is the one who will not develop the morality. And so we have this ability, you'll have this ability to go to this high level of leadership, not by denying the bad feelings, not by pretending that they're not there, but understanding them and working through them. You also, when you can quiet that voice in your brain and choose a path through and take some deep breaths, understand the power of mirror neurons. You ever walk in a room and then all of a sudden there's hostility? You've ever walked in a room and it's like warmth and kindness? 70% of communication is body language because your motor cortex has sensory neurons. You map the body language of the other on your motor cortex. It's connected to the limbic system, and then you can feel that emotion. There's no language there. But if you quiet the voice in your brain, understand the amygdala, all of a sudden you can start to see the world around you in a different way without negative condemnation and judgment, without the negative attributions that the amygdala would like to inspire. And you can start to see truth. You can start to see the suffering of the patient rather than making yourself a victim of the patient. And so now we can start to, and you will mirror and feel the responses of the other, whether it's kindness or anger. The problem is that if you don't become aware that this is going on, you're not calling the tune. The other person's body language is calling the tune, and you're dancing to it. And so authentic leadership requires the subordination, awareness of the amygdala, the executive function to settle it for a second, take some deep breaths. Don't make the negative judgments that will be inspired. And if you're sitting in a circumstance and you're feeling the negativity, observe it. And then you can ask why it's there. And then you'll get insight into the needs, the motivations of the others. By understanding yourself, you can improve your experience, you can improve your workplace, you can improve others. And all of a sudden, you'll be a person of integrity, a trusted person that's safe for the world because they'll understand your goals and motivations. And then you'll understand that good people will empower you. And so this is the path that I would suggest to leadership, that I think that you will figure out your own temperament, figure out your own way of going through the world. It is okay. But you'll figure out your way of being authentic and making the world a better place. I thank you for the leadership that you're exercising today. You're pretty influential people. You're top of the society. So thanks for the good work, and I only want more influence and power to come to you so you can do an even better job. Thanks so much. I think we have a few minutes.
We have probably 10 to 15 minutes
Yep.
for discussion and questions, so Anna.
We were talking about somebody last week who's making change in his department, and people were trying to come around his back. And it was a great story because he had already established with his. You want to tell the story a little bit?
No, it's actually in Miami. Looked at the department needed academic on the academic trip everywhere. And one of the challenges of that is the change in the staffing type. To go from clinical to academic, so the core faculty with that. They have a staffing maximum. It's also a joint venture with the hospital system and the staffing company, so it's a joint venture. But then the challenge with that, you have this shift of power, shift of people's perception of power. When it's really not about power, it's about influence, working together and everything. And now we have new players coming on the scene, new people coming in. Of course, you have to ruffle some feathers, even though you try not to change systems and improve to be able to support a residency program. But they saw someone coming in and thought there was an opportunity to maybe change the position I have and other people. So there was a character attack, which sometimes happens. It's not an attack. It's more to redress things, whether saying, someone may not be the best person in a certain position. But what do you do when you're aware of that, when you already have established relationships with the person or coming in for 8 months previously, working closely with them so they know you, all of a sudden they hear something and they're like, wait, what does this mean? And then how do you address that? Because then you can't, if you go directly at someone, you will fail, and you'll fail in the mission in the sense of helping them understand where you stand, that you can still work with them collegially regardless because you have to work in the same mission, and also build a bridge because if you do it the wrong way, then you can actually destroy things, and you've got people depending on you. You've got residents, you've got the patients they'll take care of. So how do you bridge that gap? And that was the challenge, and I was able to bring that around, but it's something that we face. It's not just the patients we deal with, it's the people around us as we ascend in our positions, that because it becomes, there's, as I think a phrase I heard, sometimes we can be so, like, a fight for so much for something that's so small, like a name, a plaque on a wall, a little title in a code or something, but it's to step back and say, how do we keep this person whole when maybe their motives are fear, maybe their motives are something else, and it's normal, it's human behavior, but how do we put the amygdala to rest, step back and find a solution that leaves the other person as whole as possible so that you can work together collegially moving forward?
There was a, in the movie Spanglish, one of my favorite scenes, it's not the movie, whatever, the scene is awesome. Tia Leone is a woman who's going through a terrible, terrible time in life. She's frenetic, she's frantic, she's angry. She turns to her mother, played by Cloris Leachman. She said, you've been a terrible, terrible mother. During my formative years, you were an alcoholic, you were wildly promiscuous, you were terrible. I'm in this fix all because of you. Right? Okay, so horrible things to say to your mother. Cloris Leachman paused for a second. She said, oh, you're quite right, dear, but now the lessons of my life are proving a benefit to you. Right? So it's like awesome. It's like my favorite response because, oh, quite right, dear. Right? It's because she was kind of right. So it's funny that sometimes it depends what you want to oppose. Now, if it's a character assassination, he's awful, awful and untrustworthy. If you're a very trustworthy and secure person of high integrity, that kind of stuff can rise to a level of, and I don't want to underplay it, at a certain level, a level of amusement if you've established yourself. Establish yourself at the institution, establish yourself with others. So those of you taking new leadership roles, move very quickly to establish yourself, to go around and shake hands. So you know where the the salute came from. The salute, the knights in shining armor, the knights would approach each other. The lesser knight who didn't want to engage in conflict would raise his visor. That was the salute. And so if you're approaching a senior officer, the subordinate would salute. That was the raise of the visor. And you know where the handshake came from. The more powerful knight would extend his hand to signal dominance and safety. That dominance and safety saying, I'm not going to pull my sword. And so the salute and the handshake still reside as very powerful things. If you're invited to Harry and Meghan's wedding, don't extend your hand to the Queen of England. Do not. She will extend her hand first. It's part of the very important protocol. Now, we've, in the United States, lost all sense of protocol and propriety, but there's still deep within us, this powerful thing. And I tell the women in the room, when you're attending, shake hands. When the consultant comes down, oh, thanks for coming down, extend the hand. Because you can tell them a million times, tell me what you think, tell me what you think. But once you've shaken the hand, you sense safety and dominance, lowered their amygdala, lowered their threat, and established a very powerful relationship. So early on, go around, shake a lot of hands, have that high integrity approach, not a manipulative approach. People will see through that. But then all of a sudden, when people start to make those accusations, people will start to wonder where and who the problem is. So it's a very important thing, going through, and then also doing small favors where you can, where it doesn't cost anything. Let the plaque go on the wall. Building social capital. So extending hands, giving due recognition to the senior officers, and building some social capital, doing some small favors, starts to give the establishment of a power base and trust and affiliation. So when people do come behind your back and say this person's untrustworthy, of low integrity and competence, they're like, go give pause. But that's active work. Don't take it for granted. We think that we've succeeded because of our intellect, true, our knowledge, true, our skills, true. All these other things are where power resides. So I think those are active things for the emerging leader. Yeah.
So I love everything you said about, we have controlling the amygdala. What about that? You said 1/4 of your faculty doesn't want to look them in the eye and say thank you. And you're going to find that everywhere.
Yeah.
How do you convince those people that, because a lot of them feel like that's their job, it's actually just do it.
Right.
To convince them to say you saved their life, they're not buying it.
Yeah, yeah.
How many people saved their life? They just gave me. How do you turn them around?
Yeah, so first, and honestly, because my amygdala sometimes fires with them, but at a place where I'm calm, I sit down, and I still do this today. Are you happy? Are you happy? I mean, you're smart. You're at the top of the chain. I mean, geez, are you happy? Life's short. You deserve to be happy. No, this is not working. This is not working. This is not. You deserve to be happy. If you can't be happy here, you have to be happy somewhere. I'll help you find a place where you need to be happy. You can be happy. I never fired anybody. I just made them happy. My faculty are petrified when I ask if they're happy. They are, actually. No, this is how I fire people. I mean, because they're not doing. We had an intern who was like off-service anesthesia intern who was like totally awful. Disrespectful, showing up a little bit late, disengaged, right? And so they were going to fail him for the rotation. Went up to the APD. I said, call this person's program director, and the first question is, are you okay? So tell the program director to call him in the office, warn him he's going to fail the rotation, but don't start with that. Ask, are you okay? Called him in the office, said, the emergency department called me and wanted me to ask if you're okay. Busted down in tears, was not okay. Terrible thing, depression, right? So my things are you okay? And now imagine the surgeon comes down and starts screaming and yelling and behaving really poorly. Or the attending does it. I automatically think they're an alcoholic. I do. I actually do. I mean, now it's funny and it's awful, but now imagine me, like, are you okay? Like, this is not okay. This is not normal, okay behavior. Not because of the effect on others, though that's true, but the effect it has on yourself. This is not a successful life. You're not getting the stature, the esteem, the respect that you deserve. But this is exactly how people who are out of control act. And amazing, the depressions and the addictions and the relationship problems and all the other stuff that's uncovered.
Along those lines, when you have the sense, like that 25% of people, like whether they're residents or faculty,
when you have that 25% of people who feel that they're being treated unfairly, like, you know, they don't make as much money as the other people, or they have more buy down, or they have more, you know, they have a bigger office, or whatever it is. How do you get them to see justice, like see that it's fair? That I find that hard.
So first, I have very clearly established that nothing is fair. Like, life is never fair. I have no attempt to be fair. It's not fair. Not fair. The key is for you to be successful, you to be happy, you to thrive, you to grow, you to progress in your career, right? And I'm never going to try to equilibrate. Now, with salary things, there's a formula. You can calculate the formula, and then you want more money, you do this. If you want this, you do that. So I can, with the formula thing, but it's never going to be fair. But the faculty are already at the very top of society. The most educated, well-compensated, they're already there. So to be feeling like demoralized and competitive is not quite right. What do you want out of life? And let's have you get it. And so I shift that conversation away from that. And if they're good people, hopefully we can just keep them inspired with positive moves. That's all I can do. Yeah.
Very well known question, but I'm thinking about the faculty members that are, I guess, in the pre-are you happy conversation. So, you know, they're exhibiting some of these maladaptive behaviors, these amygdala behaviors, and you don't know if you're going to be able to help them out or not, or if you're going to end up with a conversation, are you happy? Kind of how do you approach that? And in particular, because when you say, if it ultimately is going to end in, you need to be happy somewhere else, we all know they're not going to be happy anywhere.
That's right.
It has nothing to do with the place. So if we're going to lead with integrity, like, I don't want to say that. But I would be comfortable saying, you take you wherever you go. So if you're not happy here, maybe there is a better environment for you, but ultimately only you can drive whether you're going to be happy or not.
Yeah, I have seen people honestly change, and they knew they needed to make changes in life that they couldn't make, and they needed a little push. So I've seen a lot of people that ended up in a different set of circumstances that were very happy, but stubborn, tough people, they don't make the change. So I think there is a category who do need a change. The second thing, though, is the people where it's more personality driven. There is I asked one of my senior residents once, I said, why did you choose to come to this program? And he said, well, you take education really seriously. I'm like, okay, that's good. Why are you that committed to education? He said, well, I saw my father as a doc lose 7 jobs. He's absolutely always has been the smartest guy. He always has been the smartest guy. His problem is he would let everybody else know he was the smartest guy too. But he was the smartest guy. He said, I don't want to end up like my father. Wasn't that interesting? He's a tough, dominant person who knows how to now keep that in check and is a very effective leader. So with those kind of people that are kind of moving off the grid, some of those near-peer counseling, some of that stuff can enlighten them in a very safe manner. Only if they're open to coaching will it work, but sometimes getting them open to coaching. And then sometimes it's the conversations of, is this going the way you want it to go? And then I have these kind of conversations, and over time, some people will emerge. Right now, there's a strong socialization process in our residency for this reason, because once they get out of residency, it's very, very hard to change and develop new habits. So I don't have the complete answer there, but there are categories of people that can be saved and rescued.
Time for another question?
Yeah.
And just, you know, that
awful.
person
Yeah.
didn't last long, but for 2 or 3 years, the chair
Yeah.
had to deal with someone who had these behaviors. I mean, any strategies for if the person at the top is kind of a easily angered jerk?
Yeah. So two things. One, whether top or elsewhere, because you can't remove all of these people, what I have is the term bubble wrap them. And so we create an insulation between us and them, and it's amazing what they will do to pull teams together who wouldn't otherwise work well together. And so we would deal with them, we would control the information flow, we would control the messages, we would be very aligned here. And so that's one. The other thing is you're not going to be able to dominate back because they have the position of power. And so in those circumstances, it's not karate, it's judo. So you're going to have to use the weight of them against them and figure out what their human need is. There's some deep-seated problem or insecurity that you've got to stay away from, which is the bubble wrap. But then there's also the part that's judo. There was a very powerful cardiologist once at Northwestern who was up in the CCU, and one of the residents came down, our residents who was rotating there. It's like, yeah, he's like, said, you know, I just don't like the way he talks about the emergency department. He said, you know, he's like, I said, what did he say? He's like, well, he said it's a mess down there. So I bumped into him in the cafeteria, and I said, Richard, how are you doing today? He's like, I'm fine. He said, how are you doing? I said, I don't know, kind of rough. The ED's a mess. And if you echo their language, all of a sudden that echoing of language, now this is manipulative behavior, but it's not authentic leadership. You took me just to the dark side, Brian.
No, but that's what I was going to say, is that for a lot of the young leaders in the room, I mean, that's politics, and you have to play politics when you get into a situation like that, and it'll be distasteful, and you don't want to do it, but you have to do the bubble wrap. You have to sometimes appeal to that person's ego. You have to do things that are on the borderline of sacrificing your integrity, but if you want to function, because you're not going to get them fired, they'll get themselves fired in a couple of years. Right. But you have to play politics, and if any of you think you're not going to play politics as you rise as leaders, you're mistaken. And if you don't ever want to play politics, you probably should walk out the door right now, because you have to do it.
You'd have to. Now the paradox of that is that guy. Then I'm like, you know, it's a mess down there, but we're trying, right? So all of a sudden, then he became an advocate. And so if you can echo that language and let them be the powerful person, you can use that weight in a positive way as well. So it can cut both ways. Some people just are always hateful, but they mostly like to be powerful. So if you let them be powerful on your behalf, sometimes if you're really good, that's what you can do. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time, and I just wanted to express yet again how much I admire you and all the work you're doing. So thank you for allowing me to occupy this hour of your life.